Hello everybody, it's Rebecca Davison here, intuitive coach and mentor, and I'm here today with Dr. Carl Bamlet from the Alpha Omega Clinic. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And Dr. Carl is a chiropractor, and he also is a certified nutritionalist specialist, and he also does applied kinesiology. So we have got lots of things to talk about today.
Absolutely.
And I've wanted to start by just maybe Carl telling us about, if somebody comes to see you, what would they come and see you for, and what would you do in a session together?
That's a very good question. So there's two typical types of people who come in. There are those people who have just had a significant pain somewhere, whether it be in their ankle, their back, their neck, wherever. And that's kind of what people typically think a chiropractor is for.
Yep.
And that's a very common source I see with people. And then there's also the people who come in with more chronic, long-standing, whether it be digestive issues or just pains that they haven't been able to figure out. They're the people that are a little bit more challenging because they're the more long-standing things that are hard to figure out, and they're the more fun ones to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And in a typical session with those people, we usually go through, you mentioned I do applied kinesiology. Typically, we would go through a muscle testing session where I'm going to apply the chiropractic principles that I know and the nutritional principles that I know through the muscle testing.
Okay.
And so then I can decide what I need to adjust, what food or nutritional supplements we need to take out or add, and also what other little bits of things that we have to work on with people, or if there's some emotional thing that's bottling up and causing their back to tighten up, then we have to address that situation as well.
Wow. So that's a huge range of things in a very, like in one session, because it's dealing with obviously the bones, obviously, in regards to the chiropractic, but also what the body's saying to us as well, and also even down to the nutrition. So there's a huge range there, and that's very holistic. So maybe tell us a little bit about your journey. Did you start off studying to be a chiropractor and then kind of that merged into other things, or tell us how you actually ended up in that place doing all three?
Yeah, it's kind of a unique way to get to where I am. When I was 17 or 18, I'll jump to the first significant portion. I was wrestling in high school, and I really enjoyed wrestling. I wrestled all the way through college, and I had a pretty significant injury to my neck and my arm. I couldn't move my arm, couldn't really feel it because it was completely numb feeling. Went to my medical doctor, and they gave me muscle relaxants and painkillers, which is what they know to do for musculoskeletal pain and injuries. And so I went there, and he gave me the muscle relaxant painkillers and told me you're out for 2 weeks. And I was stubborn enough to where I said, I'm not going to do that. So I went somewhere. We went to a chiropractor, and he adjusted my neck, released the muscles that were really sore, and that night I had a fully functional arm that was 100% normal.
Wow.
So that was the first instance with traditional chiropractic that really made me realize that was an impressive thing to have done. Then at age 19, I had been diagnosed with brain cancer. And I underwent chemotherapy and radiation and 2 brain surgeries. Had to drop out of college for 6 months and go through all the treatments. And when I got back into it, I had a different outlook because I went through the mainstream medicine, and I had been with the best oncologists, the best radiologists, the best surgeons that are about in the world. And you realize that the really good ones would respond to your questions, because I have pretty directed questions that I knew the answers to already, and the really good ones would answer, we don't know the answer to that yet.
Right.
Science will eventually get to that.
Yep.
But a large majority of them wouldn't respond that way. They would try and dilly-dally around the anatomy or the physiology or what's happening structurally, and that's stuff that's really easily seen, but it doesn't explain what's happening. It just tells us what is happening, what has happened in the body, not what's causing it to happen.
Right.
And the cause is much more important and much more important to get on top of and figure out and stop it from causing the symptoms anymore.
Right. Wow.
So then that got me into chiropractic school, and in chiropractic school, I realized that the traditional chiropractic all on its own was really good, but there's questions about when to adjust something and what to adjust, and no matter how many adjustments I could give you, if you had a terrible diet, I wouldn't be able to help you, or if you had some emotional baggage you were carrying that we couldn't get rid of, or that you couldn't get rid of, the chiropractic adjustment wouldn't make you release that. It would relieve the symptoms, just like if you took a pill, it would release the symptoms. And if you took enough adjustments, it would keep relieving the symptoms for a long period of time. But it would make it be a weak spot that's always going to keep flaring back. So if we can find what's causing that to be a weak spot, and then give the adjustments to help get it back into line, it will stay in place longer and feel better for a longer period of time. And as you work on whatever that thing is that we tell you. So if it's like a gluten intolerance or a dairy intolerance or emotional trauma from when you're 14, if you work on these things, whatever it ends up being, it will make you stay better for the longer period of time.
Awesome. That's amazing, because it's, the word that keeps on coming back to me is very holistic. Like, you've identified something that's good in regards to doing chiropractic work, and then you've gone, okay, but that's not the full picture, and then learning more in regards to the kinesiology, and then learning more in regards to the nutrition, so you can actually provide that as a one-stop shop for people, I would imagine. You must see some pretty amazing things happen in your rooms, I can imagine. Yep. So is there maybe some circumstances that you can give us a bit of a picture in regards to maybe somebody who comes to mind that's come to see you, maybe they've had pain or trauma, and how you've kind of assisted them to shift that?
I'll tell a couple stories from a more structural standpoint, and then there's some food that's contributed to it, and another one that they thought was a structural standpoint, but it was more emotional that came to it.
Sure.
So a patient who came in relatively recently came in with a very sore low back where they were unable to stand upright, and they were hobbling in and moving around very minimally because it was just so painful. And we started working on them, and we found a few points around by their intestines, and we worked on those points, freed them, and they were incredibly painful. And the patient was actually squirming around, and it was they had a smile on their face, and they were laughing because they ultimately knew it was a good pain, but it was like one of those pains that just kind of makes you cringe and smile and laugh at the same time. Right. So they were doing that on the table, and we worked on a whole bunch of points that were doing that to this person. And the back injury was an old back injury that came back and came back and came back. And one thing that showed up with them was a gluten intolerance. They changed their diet pretty dramatically, but they still had a lot of carbohydrates in their diet, so we had to work on that with them. And so doing that was one of the big things that we have to do to get this person stabilized, along with the structural things, putting stuff back in line, working on the manifestations of this. But if you don't take out that food that's throwing the person off, it will keep flaring up whenever they have too much of that food. So that's one way we have to get rid of that. Another patient that comes to mind, they've had they came into me with their first presentation, and they had a jaw that was off and a neck that was off. And we started to work on them, and I went around doing some adjustments, and like, oh, that's improved. And each thing was taking away a bit of the pain and a bit of the trauma that was going on with it, but it wasn't 100% yet. So we got to a muscle in her jaw on that first visit, and I started to push on it, and she started weeping uncontrollably at that point. And it was not pain. It was we all know the difference between pain crying and emotional crying. And she was having a very emotional crying. And afterwards, she sat back up, moved her neck around. Oh, that's much better. Moved her jaw around. Wow, it's better. Thank you. Came back for the second visit. Worked on that point again. She started a little bit of tearing up, but it wasn't as much. We found another point. We did some work on that, and that started because of the left side of the neck or something started to tighten up, and that started to get that released. So and that started to make her cry dramatically from that too, and it was the sobbing response. A few visits down the line, every visit she's been in, she's had a bawling episode, and we found a point in her armpit, in her finger, in her jaw, and these different things, and they automatically put thoughts into her head from where she's storing her emotions at. This is nothing that would be explained in Western medicine, because we don't have any explanation of where thoughts can be stored in our body in Western medicine. But there are definite stress points that I find in people's bodies that correlate from just about every patient. And they go back to, if you think of how it would tell, what signals it would be telling us when we have stress. When we were cavemen and cavewomen walking around, that's what my thing is talking about what we were meant to be doing when we were 10, 20,000 years ago, before farming started. We would have been out and about, and the form of stress we would have had would have been a saber-toothed tiger that attacked us, and we would have been left with a bunch of scrapes if we survived. Otherwise we died, and there's no need to worry about it. We'd have a bunch of scrapes, and we'd have to get that solved. Otherwise we're going to have bacterial infections getting in and causing us to die from infection. Otherwise, if we had a neighboring tribe that came up and that spear hit us or cut us or whatever, we'd have to worry about bacterial infections again. And we'd have to go lay down and let these injuries heal by resting our body and letting our immune system attack it. So there's points in our body that flare up as stress points from these original reasons that make us want to go lay down in our cave because we're sore and we're in pain, because stupid caveman us wouldn't realize that we should go lay down and let the injury heal. We'd just say, ow, foot hurt. So there's 2 points in the feet, on the bottom of the feet, and that's one reason why when we're extra stressed, we always like a good foot rub. There's a couple points in the hands. There's a couple points in the intestines, the buttocks, the shoulders, the neck, and then the jaw.
Right.
All these can manifest in different people in different ways, and they're very common things. That's why sayings like, you're a pain in my butt.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I use a different word. Or I carry my stress in my shoulders.
Yeah.
Or you're a pain in the neck.
Mm-hmm.
These are all common sayings that we've all heard many a time. Mm-hmm. And these are all different stress areas that flare up, and different people have different manifestations of this. Mm-hmm. So treating that along with whatever other things are out is how you usually go about fixing someone, more than just the bit of structural weakness that it is, because the part that you're feeling is usually the weak link in the whole system, and so you got to figure out the weak link.
Wow, that is fascinating, and it makes so much sense. And so the natural question that it wants to lead me to from there is, what are your thoughts in regards to stress in our lifestyle that we have today compared to the caveman? I mean, the caveman obviously had perhaps different stresses, but, can you maybe give me your opinion about what you think about people endurers in regards to stress these days?
Absolutely. Well, let's start off by what the caveman stress was. The caveman stress was that instant terror that was for, 1 minute, 2 minutes maybe, and you either died and you didn't have to worry about the stress, or you won and you survived and then you had to go lay down and heal. And other than that, it was just gathering food, which wasn't that stressful unless you came across that tiger again.
Yeah.
So that's the only stress that our caveman ancestors had. They didn't have bills to pay. They didn't have mouths to feed. They didn't have, a car that broke down. They have to go get repairs on it. They don't have the money to get the repairs. Whatever you want to think of. They didn't have all these things that built up. And over time, just keep on increasing the water level of that stress. So I'll give you an example here.
Absolutely.
So that doesn't give any endorsements. So if you look at this bottle here, you look at this as being your amount of stress that you have, and right when you get to this point, it overflows and it becomes an issue. So down at this portion of it, this is your stress from when you were, childhood memories that might have been a little bit stressful, or something that builds up. Some people may have it be about that full. Some people may have it be that full, but we'll say about that much generally. And then with a spouse, you get up to about there, spousal, arguments back and forth. When you have property issues or financial issues around that, you have a particularly stressful day. And if you have any big life events that come up, a loved one passes away, that's going to be a huge amount added on top of it. And it's going to overflow you, and you're going to have a problem come out. It's very hard to take away people's stress completely. We just have to help people be able to compensate and handle their stressors as best they can, and identify when the stress is an issue. Because if you have low back pain that you don't know what causes it, it's going to add more stress to a situation where you already had a lot of stress. So if I can say, okay, this is caused by this thought from when you were 18, if that's what's doing it, then that would help. Or if I say, it's from this food, take that food out, that takes away that bit of stress. And as you get rid of that pain, that's a stress response. And so let's talk about what we mean with stress. Because everyone, the most common thing I hear is, I don't have any stress.
Really?
People think that they're not showing stress means they don't have stress.
Right.
Stress is a response in our body. The adrenal glands produce a substance called cortisol, and your mind sends a signal to this adrenal gland telling it to produce it. Well, if your mind perceives stress, whether it be somebody cuts you off when you're driving or whatever, it's going to say, okay, saber-tooth tiger attacked, produce this. You just got in an argument with your spouse, okay, saber-tooth tiger attacked, produce cortisol. Give us energy so we can fight this thing or run away. That's where someone may have more of a anger response when they get into an argument, or they may just try and storm off. That's that initial response that we had coming to light, fight or flight. That's what happens with all these responses is cortisol production, and then eventually your body starts getting more and more run down, and that's where you get more of the chronic fatigue happening.
Right. Wow. Yeah, because... And chronic being the word, right? Again.
A little bit of an issue there.
No worries. Continue on. You're talking about stress.
What point was I at there? I kind of forgot.
We're talking about cortisol and stress and the saber-toothed tiger and how it can end up leading to chronic fatigue.
Yeah, so as we keep getting more run down, all these things keep being a self-perpetuating problem. They keep adding on more stress and more stress and more stress. So you have to address the problems as they come up in order to keep them from building on and building on and building on. So if we express our emotions, if we talk about them, if we journal, things out. These are all ways to help address that. And I think part of what chiropractic does, and part of what massage does, in that is it relieves that stress where that stress is being shown. So it's a bit of it because we enjoy going there. We want to go have it happen, and so that's an enjoyment thing. And then you adjust the bones and you get them in the right area, and that's feels good. And then that relieves a bit more of the stress on top of putting everything structurally in line. So it all's kind of a self-perpetuating cycle of getting you better by doing these things. So it's a constant fight that we all have to battle with.
And I'm a big believer that healing often takes place during witnessing. There needs to be another person present to facilitate that process. So it's really fascinating what you're talking about. Because, I think people underestimate that stress long-term can be a killer. Chronic fatigue, etc. That's not sustainable, right? It's not a model that goes, oh yes, you can do that for a period of time and then pop out of it and pop back into it. It's not good for your health. It needs to be avoided, not endured.
One thing you see around our world that I've talked with this quite a bit about with you, there's coffee shops on every corner, everywhere around the world, and what coffee shops do is they tell the brain to produce more cortisol, so more energy.
Yeah.
So you're pushing on that same cycle. So if you're already having emotional stressors and you drink a lot of coffee, it's going to just perpetuate that cycle in a chemical sense more than the emotional thought process sense. But it's the same cycle. It will wear you down and make you more vulnerable to those thoughts. Yes. So that's how our diet and lifestyle can directly react with those emotions.
Awesome. And Carl, you're in the process of writing or having written a book. Is that correct?
I've written it, and I'm getting it edited and all the illustrations and everything done. So it's out of my hands for the time being, but it's still up ways before it's going to be finished, I think, because I got to get all the illustrations made up and get everything working right.
But and that, of course, you talk a reference to the Paleo Diet. Is that correct?
I do. So what I'm going to do is the book is going to be directed towards patients and towards prospective patients and towards people who just want to kind of get an idea of what they should be looking for in their healthcare and healthcare provider. So it's going to talk about the benefits of Western medicine and the benefits of Eastern medicine and also the downfalls of each, because Western medicine is very good at emergency situations. Eastern medicine is very good at holistic and well-being, but they don't do the others very well. So if somebody were to come in with me with a gunshot or a stab wound, I'm not going to know what to do. If it was in a real surgery, I could probably grab a knife out of the drawer and flick out a bullet or something, but it wouldn't be very clean and it wouldn't be a good survival rate. So I wouldn't decide to do that. But the medical doctors are very good at their emergencies in that situation, but when you go to them with niggly aches and just little bits that are sore, it's not the right place to be going, because then they get overwhelmed and they're taught the drugs to go that route, and it's just not the right way to go.
Right.
So that's what the book's going to be a big touch on. There's going to be a lot about the paleo diet and how every doctor you go to, no matter chiropractor, general practitioner, dentist, whatever, they should try and get you to go towards a diet like that, because that's what you're naturally meant to be eating, and eat foods that would have been around for your ancestors. So if you're from Norway, traditionally, that would have different foods than someone from Costa Rica. Right. So you got to kind of understand that a little bit, and that might be just trial and error, because there's a lot of people who don't have just one area they're from. There's many areas that they're from.
Right, absolutely.
And then it also goes on to touch about other aspects of energetics and stress and all these things on people and how they can affect you, because it's kind of touching on how your body can be affected from all these different ways. Absolutely.
So, yeah, like I said, because you've got those three different elements that you're bringing together, it's a very holistic approach, which is fantastic for people. Yeah. So if people want to get hold of you, you're based in Christchurch, of course. Whereabouts is the Alpha Omega Clinic?
The Alpha Omega Clinic is on 66 Innes Road in Christchurch, near Maryvale and St. Albans. Yeah. And you can find me on Facebook very easily at Dr. Carl Bamlet, the Modern Caveman, and my webpage. Yeah. Each week I do a podcast on Plains FM, and I'm also broadcast on the radio at 9 a.m. Tuesday mornings here in Christchurch. And Nelson and Hamilton, I don't know the exact days they're broadcast over the air, but you can download the podcast at any time and listen to them. Awesome. Have them all on my Facebook page. Otherwise, you can go to drbamlet.com to find some of the older podcasts.
Excellent. Fantastic. And so if there's one piece of advice, like health advice, that you think is very important for people to know, what would it be?
Well, that's a very good question. One bit of advice, I guess it would have to go around their own diet, because that's medicine that they're taking 3 times a day at least, or it's poison that they're taking 3 times a day at least.
Wow. It's a very direct way of putting it.
Exactly. So you're either going to harm your body or hurt or benefit your body by doing this. So eat the diet that's correct for you. Get rid of all the junk food, all the white processed food, all the sugars, all the fizzy drinks. Get rid of all that stuff and focus on a good, healthy living lifestyle and eat clean meats, vegetables, fruits, and that's the best thing you can do for yourself.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. It's just been amazing to connect with you, and it's just a wealth of information there. So I'm sure if people want to come along and see you, that they're going to learn more and learn how to look after their health in the best possible way. So thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Rebecca.
You're welcome. Okay, folks, we'll catch you again next time when we have another person along so we can share some insights and views in regards to how to live your blissful life. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.